Hey, Walking Discovery crew, Steven here. Thank you so much for tuning in. This episode of our Walk and Talk series is going to be a little bit different because I am on the road. I'm in San Antonio at this place called Calaveras Park, right outside of the city, and I've been on the road for several weeks. I'm not going to be seeing anybody as a part of the group this week, so I thought I would just take this opportunity to introduce myself formally to the page, for those of you who don't know me, and a little bit about my journey in creating Walking Discovery, a little bit more about the group for those of you who are new, and why we do what we do. Many of the subscribers of this channel have seen the video interview with me and Wyatt, and I just want to say thank you all so much for the positive feedback. It's really been the spark that got me taking this a little bit more seriously as far as the YouTube page goes. Making videos is a challenge for me, but seeing how Wyatt and I were able to connect with so many people around the world really opened my eyes to how important it can be to share the perspectives of neurodivergent people or those who have a different view of the world and way of expressing themselves. Before we jump into the good stuff, feel free to subscribe to the channel. That'll get you a weekly video highlighting neurodivergent perspectives, and like the video to help it get sent out to people who could use this information that the channel provides. All right, let's take a walk. First of all, a little bit about me. My name is Steven Offit. I currently live in Baltimore, Maryland. I've lived in Maryland my whole life. I love my city. I love being a part of the community here. I know Baltimore can get a bad rap on the news stations if you're from out of town, but for the most part, it's a great place to live with an amazing food scene and a great DIY and art community. I personally love the diversity of the many neighborhoods, and I would recommend anyone take a visit here. My hobbies outside of work include traveling, trying new foods, eating spicy peppers and growing spicy peppers, playing music. I'm a huge gamer, and I love learning about random things on YouTube and going down internet rabbit holes. If you want to know more about my hobbies, you can follow my personal channel. I'll put the link in the description. But for the purpose of the video, I want to share my journey in creating this organization, Walking Discovery. Why don't we just take it from the beginning? I grew up in a city called Columbia, Maryland, which is a very diverse and affluent city in Maryland. It's racially diverse, but not only that, it seemed like an open-minded place where people could be themselves. I lived in a neighborhood of maybe 20 different houses, and we had neighbors who are immigrants from Africa, Russia, Italy, the Netherlands, and all with different religions and backgrounds and beliefs. In my opinion, it was the perfect place for an American child to grow up because it encapsulated that idea of a cultural melting pot. So I know I'm going way far back here, but stick with me. My kindergarten classroom was an integrated one. So the kids who were autistic or physically disabled, they sat right next to us and weren't huddled into their own smaller rooms like many schools do. This was not a big revelation for me at the time. I mean, I was in kindergarten, but it was normal. And I think that's even better in some ways because I didn't see people who were neurodivergent or who were disabled as different, really. They were sitting right next to us. They would share, show, and tell just like the rest of us. They were reading the stories right along with us. So as an adult, I can see how that's different in a lot of places now. But as a kid, I really just thought that was normal. I loved my upbringing in this city. But unfortunately to me at the time, in second grade, I moved to a more rural area of the state, which was much more culturally and racially homogenous. This kind of unconsciously shocked me as a child. This is where some of my problems in my youth started to become a little bit more apparent. Growing up, also unknown to me at the time, I had undiagnosed ADHD, and I struggled very badly with school from second grade all the way to the end of high school in 12th grade. I had poor grades. I was reprimanded often by my teachers and parents. I was always the kid who couldn't sit still, was tapping my pencil. I wouldn't do my homework. I had to forge signatures and rip up report cards to avoid getting grounded. I was labeled as a bad student and someone who misbehaved. And while yes, sometimes I did misbehave, I was more often just being myself, an intensely passionate ADHD type person. Instead of realizing this about my diagnosis, I got bitter, angry, and continued pushing the limits. I wanted so bad to be independent and do things my way. But as a child, I obviously didn't have the faculties to do that myself. There was no amount of pushing me that would cause me to provide the results that my parents and teachers were looking for. I was like a donkey with my feet dug into the ground, just stubborn. I did not want to conform. If I wasn't interested in a subject, I refused to take the bait. That's why you would see me get E's and F's in algebra, but A's and B's in psychology and science. It also really depended on the teachers. I had some amazing teachers. Shout out to Mr. Sogard in 5th grade. You're a real one. They let me know that I was talented, funny, and worthy of praise, even though I was a bit all over the place and perhaps a bit distracting to others. It was teachers like those who set me on a course to wanting to become a teacher myself. Ironic, isn't it? The bad student always dreamed about becoming a teacher. It never fails to make me look back and laugh at myself for that. When I got to high school, I was still connected with the neurodivergent and disabled population because, funny story, I was constantly missing the bus to take me to school, but I was lucky because the special education bus also came through my neighborhood to pick up my neighbor, and the bus driver would stop and ask me if I needed a ride. My parents would hate having to drive me to school after I missed the bus, so I would just hop on. There, I got to make casual friendships with autistic people. At the time, I had never even heard of autism or even knew that these people were autistic. They were labeled as special ed and other words that people used back in those days that really just aren't words that we should be using today. These experiences were very enriching to me. All right, I'm skipping around a bit, but we're going to cut to a few years after graduation. I graduated from high school by the skin of my teeth with a 1.8 GPA, and I failed to get into any college I applied for. But lucky, because at the end of the day, that ended up being the biggest blessing I ever received, was not going to college. So I did what my parents suggested and took myself to community college and enrolled in education classes because, like I said, I always wanted to become an elementary school teacher. I really wanted to be a positive influence on kids who reminded me of myself, just like the teacher who I really cherished and respected from my school days. Well, believe it or not, I couldn't get college right either, and I failed every class other than the ones I preferred. This led me to going to a doctor who diagnosed me with ADHD and put me on stimulants, which essentially halted my life and development in the most terrible way. But that's probably a topic for another discussion. Because of how the stimulants affected me, I legitimately did not believe I had ADHD because the drugs made me act so crazy. I figured, well, if this is supposed to be helping me, it's not helping me, so there must be something else going on. I was at a loss. I'm a guy who couldn't do school, couldn't keep a job. I didn't have many skills other than I was an introspective people person who loved to learn about psychology. As luck would have it, my sister, who was a huge mentor in my life up until this age, and she still is now. Just a quick aside about my sister, she would always show up. She was about 4 years older than me and would show up in my kindergarten classes. And as like a 5th grader, you know how you would go and help read books to the kindergartners and do activities. I legitimately in kindergarten thought that because she was in our classes and teaching me something, that she was actually my teacher or a teacher. I didn't really know the difference back then. But anyway, my sister, she was starting her career as an occupational therapist, and one time she invited me out to the local fair with her and her client just for fun. I connected with this autistic kid and we kind of hit it off. I remember having this palpable feeling of, okay, this feels right. This is where I need to be. I racked my brain and I said, you know what? I am not doing well in life right now. I'm flailing around, kind of just acting out. Nothing's making sense. But I know that this made sense to me. So I went on Craigslist and I wrote up an ad portraying myself as someone who had experience helping others who are autistic because of that experience at the fair, when in reality I barely had any experience. I know, not the best start to a career, but I took a chance on myself and I was hoping that somebody would take a chance on me. Somehow, the Hail Mary connected and that's where I met Wyatt. He was the jump start to my whole career. I'd explain more about Wyatt here, but I made a whole video about him, so feel free to check that out after you watch this video if you're interested. I'll leave all the links in the description. His parents were on a sabbatical from their careers as professors at LSU, and they decided to take a chance on me as they were heading back to Louisiana in a few months and ending their services with his occupational therapist. Wyatt was hands down the most unique human I've ever met up to that point. He was a nonverbal autistic guy. He was very hyperactive. He had incredible intelligence when it came to spatial awareness and coordination, but he was kind of confusing to me at the time. I tried my best to just be intuitive and learn and understand him. This was the most eye-opening experience I've ever had. I cherished every single day I worked with him because I felt like my mind was expanding every chance I got to be with him. I was learning so much, and not through any other way of learning than just being around him, if that makes sense. Trying to see things from a different perspective, if that makes sense. Long story short, after a few months of working with Wyatt, his family and him went back to LSU, and thank goodness they referred me to his occupational therapy program, and I was hired on the spot to start assisting the teen recreational social program for autistic and neurodivergent guys. My mentor at the time, who was the leader of that group, he taught me so much. He was the most likable guy. I remember the first day I met him, he was eating some enchiladas out of a takeout container with a broken spoon, and I was like, is this really the guy? Is this the guy that's going to be teaching me something? But it turned out that he was a lot more than meets the eye. He was kind, he was caring, he was funny, and he just had a way of making these guys feel special and loved and cared for. He didn't do it by using a lot of flowery language or praising everybody for tiny little accomplishments. He did it by treating them like they were a bunch of rascals that they were, treating them like they were his friends. And really they were his friends, It might have been under the more professional circumstances, but this guy connected with them in a way that I don't think people often would connect with them. And I wanted to be that guy. But unfortunately, as the case with many people who are very positive on the outside, there was something dark within him. Less than a year into learning from him, he tragically passed away due to his depression. There's certain words on YouTube that you can't say without getting a flag on your account, so I'm leaving that word out. But this was devastating to me, and something that I just didn't see coming. But from that day on, I was distraught and determined to fill his shoes. I still feel like I'm doing that today. I wanted to be there for these group of guys who didn't know how or why something like that could have happened. It was so hard for some people to process and couldn't come to acceptance of it, but I did my best to be like him for them. It's the only thing I knew how to do. I stayed with that group for about a year. We went on hikes in Frederick, Maryland. We went to festivals, and we made games and obstacle courses and events at the therapy practice. But unfortunately, I had to leave because I was struggling financially, and the 2-hour commute for me to get from my house to there was, I was getting paid less than I was paying for gas to get to work. So something had to give, and I was definitely struggling financially, but I finally felt like I had a purpose in life. From there, my sister extended an olive branch when I was in my early 20s and allowed me to live with her in her basement apartment as she was starting her pediatric occupational therapy business. Okay, so here's a start, is what I thought. She allowed me to come up with games, obstacle courses, and engage with the children in really fun ways. I loved it. This led me to working with behavioral practices in the area, which is where I learned how awful ABA therapy can be when poorly implemented. I hated these jobs, but I loved the clients that I had the opportunity to meet. And the reason I say that I learned how awful ABA can be is because I saw how detrimental the practice can be when it's taken to an extreme. I can see the value of it, I guess. However, in a lot of these cases, and if you don't know what ABA is, just look it up. You might want to go to some autistic-led forums and see what self-advocates think about ABA. I'm not going to say that every ABA practice is awful, but just kind of maybe do some research for yourself, and you can see it's too much to get into for this video because I want to stay on track. Have a hard time doing that enough as it is. But if you don't know what ABA is, just go Google it. Go to some autistic-led pages and see what autistic people think about it. And I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, I was getting more experience, and I decided, you know what? Enough living on the fringes. I was bouncing from place to place. I was living with my sister and random people, and couch surfing a lot, even living in my car for a few months. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to call my friend. We're going to try to land on a place that we can move into together. Called one of my best friends. We found a spot in Baltimore, and that's where I started my new journey. I was commuting an hour each way to work from Baltimore to Annapolis, and still barely making enough to afford gas. I would get canceled on often, and they wouldn't even tell me until I was in their driveway half of the time. I was so sick and tired of it. I loved this job, but the way people would treat me and the money I was getting paid was so poor. One day, when enough was really enough, I got home after being canceled on for like the third time that week, and I took a stress walk in my neighborhood. I came across this place 5 blocks away, and I saw a group of people playing at the park and hanging out. I thought to myself, these are my people. I probably looked like a hot mess, but I put my pride aside, and all I can remember is a blur. I basically said, I need to work here. How can I do that? And the person who was leading the group pointed up the hill, and I ran home, like literally sprinted home. I took a shower, put on my best clothes, which were not really the best clothes, and I walked right through security doors and applied on the spot. Within a week, I had the job of my dreams at a wonderful inclusive employment agency built for autistic adults. There was creative arts, outing opportunities. The employees were young, passionate people. I was home. I felt like this is where I really needed to be at. And it happened to be right next door to where I moved in. What a coincidence, you know? Every day working for this company was pure bliss. I gained promotion after promotion. Just from applying myself, I wanted to work 5 extra hours a day because of how much I felt like I belonged there. Until somebody, I guess, took notice of the way I was conducting myself, one of my supervisors or somebody at this agency, and they told on me. They said, they ran and said, they basically made a complaint about me and said, you're having too much fun. And that just did not compute. I still, to this day, don't know who said that, but I didn't get mad or felt like my creativity was stifled. I remember going home that night and opening up my journal and scribbling a plan for my own organization. If I could make it in a perfect world, what would it be? And so I wrote that plan down. I was trying to put things together. I was like, what is the most simple activity that I love to do? The answer is going on a walk and exploring. Boom, that was it. Walking discovery. That was the day that it was born. I decked out a 3-ring binder, kind of like a vision board of sorts, and from that moment, I was willing to put it all on the line. I went to my boss's office at the employment agency and said, hey, I know this might be a conflict of interest here, but I want to start a group to help people get out into the community for exploring, fun, and socialization. To my surprise, not only did she love the idea, but she encouraged me to take it up to 11, and she also let me keep my job there, which was a solid. That may have been the best day of my life that I can remember. I vowed to make this organization purely recreational, where fun is the name of the game. We're not doing skill building, we're not monitoring data, educational stuff, or making behavioral plans. I mean, that's pretty much already the way of life for so many autistic and disabled adults. I did not want to add to that. I wanted to be an alternative, something new. We needed to be radically inclusive. built from the ground up for the neurodivergent and disabled community. Not exclusive to that community, but always from top to bottom accommodating so that people who are excluded from most groups are always welcome with Walking Discovery. That moment was in 2017 and it's 2023 now. So this is our 6th year, over half a decade. In this time, we've gone from walking circles around the park, to riding in the tallest roller coaster on the East Coast, to camping trips, to every damn zoo and aquarium around the area, and my favorite part, eating a ton of awesome food in our city. Speaking of full circle, I later joined up with Wyatt in 2021 down in Louisiana, and now I make regular trips out to see him on my travels. I've also met other neurodivergent folks who I work with while I'm traveling. And now every time I travel for fun, I also tie it all together with people who I've developed relationships with around the country. Speaking of that, if you're interested in me paying you or somebody else a visit, please comment and send me an email at walkingdiscoveryinfo@gmail.com. I'll put that on the page somewhere so you guys can see it, and I'll put it in the description, so check it out. Whether you're from California or Michigan or Texas, let me know, and while I'm traveling, I'll come out and see you. It makes it so much more enjoyable and fun for me to travel when I know that I have a purpose and that I can be making connections with other people and letting them into this awesome community that we've created together. So the story doesn't end there, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to put it aside for now and fill you all in on the rest in another video later down the line. If you made it all the way to the end of this story, I just want to say that I'm deeply thankful for you taking the time to listen to me. It's been a long journey to get here, and making these videos takes it all out of me. I mean, this is hard. It's hard to stay focused. It's hard to write these scripts. It's hard to edit everything. It's all stuff I'm learning, and it's new for me. So the fact that people are appreciating it really just means the world and makes it all worthwhile. I know it's really important for many to hear this, whether to help you on your journey, whether you're in this community or not. This could be an inspirational story to have you continue following your dreams and trying to find purpose in your life, or whether it's connecting you with these actual services that we provide and the educational content that Walking Discovery provides. Before you go, I just wanted to say that we started a Patreon, which for a small monthly donation, you can gain access to exclusive interviews, videos a week or two early, and access to our social club on Discord for chatting, gaming, sharing stories, and just chilling back and having a good time. I'm going to be putting a ton of effort into this, so I would love you to be our first patron. Link for that in the description. All it really takes to support us in this page is super easy. Just like the video so that the YouTube algorithm will send it out to people who could use this content. Share the video with other people and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with Walking Discovery happenings. Whew. All right, that's all from me today, guys. Thank you all. Have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.